Hey, what is going on everyone? It's me, Mr. Mario, and today we're going to be looking at something a little bit different here, which can hopefully make modding a bit easier for the 1.6 original Xbox. You see, what I like to do is I like to hard mod these systems, meaning you can run a custom BIOS on them. On the 1.0 through 1.5 models, you're able to do that easily enough through a TSOT flash, so you end up rewriting the BIOS on the motherboard itself. However, when it comes to the 1.6, you cannot do that as easily. You could either soft mod or you can install a mod chip. Now, the mod chip I'm going to be installing is going to be the Aladdin XT+2, I believe that's what it is. And typically what you'd have to do for this on a Xbox is you would take something like the pin header, which comes with the mod chip, pop it right there, and this is where the LPC debug port is supposed to go. And then you simply just socket your mod chip on top of that. And at that point, after a bit of soldering and everything, it should be installed. Well, you cannot do that as easily with the 1.6 console. You see, unfortunate for us, this LPC debug port on the 1.6 is disconnected from any type of circuitry. So what you'd need to do is you would need to take your pin header, the one that I showed, and you'd have to solder it in right here and then connect about 5 wires to different spots on the motherboard. However, there is something that we can do which should make that hopefully a little bit easier. In comes these things right here, and this is the LPC rebuild board by ToXZiN 1. Now, from what I see, this is heavily based off of the X3 rebuild board, and I know there's several different rebuild boards that are floating around out there that have been created from different companies, and also some have been open sourced. So I did end up purchasing these from ToXZiN, and I should hopefully have a link down below in the description as to where you can buy them. And this video is going to be a little bit of kind of a overview, walkthrough, install, and I guess a summary or review at the end of these boards right here. So not a direct tutorial, it's kind of going to be a tutorial with a few other things in there. However, this is going to assume you know how to take apart an Xbox, you know how to solder, and even some of the parts of modding a console with a mod chip. It's going to kind of glaze over those as well, because this is really just going to focus on the LPC board here mostly. That's what we're here for. If you do want to install one of these, I have a full tutorial showing how to do it, in which you have to do it, or in this case, you can install it on a 1.6 console, and you're able to then just rewire the LPC port itself. But if you're wanting to watch that tutorial in conjunction with this, I guess you can watch this to see how the tutorial would go with the LPC portion and follow this part instead of rewiring the whole thing yourself. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this. We are going to have to prep the board itself, we're going to have to prep the mod chip, and then we're going to install it and see how well it works. So right here, just to start this off, I do want to prepare the motherboard. So for that, I'm going to cut the L frame. Again, this is on a 1.6, and there's kind of been some back and forth over whether this is required or not. In my opinion, this is something that you should do if you're going to be installing this on a 1.6 board. So let me go ahead and do that here. I'm just going to find the trace and begin to cut it. Alright, so that has been cut, thankfully. And it was a deep enough cut where, I seem to be comfortable enough with that. So there we go. The entirety of the board, at least in terms of the L-frame, has been modified, so now the L-frame trace has been cut. For the next portion here, we are going to need to lightly modify the pin header itself by removing a few of the pins. So what you'll need to do is you'll just need to take the pin header and first pop it so it goes at the very bottom pins and it can go up to the top. Now, looking at this here, I'm going to have a further detailed diagram on screen, but we're going to have to make sure that the top 4 pins up here are cleared, as well as we're also going to have to remove a pin right here. I'm going to go 2 down, another pin right here, and then these 2, well, it's magnetic, but these 2 pins. So again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this pin header and I'm going to modify it myself. And that's because you don't need all the pins here, and with the way this rebuild board is set up, if you have all of them, it looks like it's going to clash. So for this, you can really just take, a set of small pliers and rip out the pins that we do not need. So I'm going to take a few moments to do that. Alright, so I'm just going to double check my work right here. I end up again removing the top 2 pins, one below, then these 2 pins and 1 pin on the other side. So just seeing how well it connects here into the mod chip. And there we go. That's about how it should look. So really you're going to have the longer portions of the legs in the chip itself, and you're going to have the shorter portions going through the motherboard. So that's what we're going to need to do next. Let me go ahead and remove this pin header so we can continue further. On the motherboard itself, for further preparation, I'd recommend, first of all, of course, clean up the motherboard. As you can see, mine just had some dust on it and I cleaned off and it was fine. But then take your pin header, again, make sure the lower side, so the smaller ends of the legs, are going to be on the bottom, and line it up with the very bottom of this LPC port right there, and that should be about what you're looking for. Now at this point, I'd recommend taking a piece of electrical tape, and we're going to get this all taped up just to secure it in place and make sure that we do not lose our pin header. And even if you want to for now, you can overdo it with the tape. Again, just be careful when you take it off, and this is just going to be temporary. So we just want this to stay in place and prevent gravity from doing its job. So again, even if it's a hot mess like that, that is totally fine, because by the end of this, we're going to take this off, and we just want to make sure this stays secured while also protecting the motherboard. So before we continue to solder this in, I'm just going to prepare the mod chip as well too. Alright, so for this portion, I'm just going to take the optional step, and again, recommended but optional step, of permanently keeping this mod chip on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ground this out, and that is going to mean that this mod chip is just always going to be on whenever I turn on the console. Just because the only reason we really needed to turn it off before would be for Xbox Live protection, but because original Xbox Live is no longer a thing, we don't need to worry about that. So let's go ahead and continue on with this, with the first bit of soldering. So that's it, the mod chip has now been prepared. At this point, the rest of this is going to be on the console itself. So let's go ahead and take one of these out the package here and see what we're dealing with. Alright, so for the next step, now that we have the, as you can see, mod chip enabled and everything, all the actual modifications to the chip itself are done, at least hardware wise. So now we need to continue on to the console. So remember, we've already modified the pin header and everything should be fine at this point. We just need to actually get it physically installed. So I did check with ToXZiN because I was thinking that it'd be nice to put the board on this beforehand and solder everything in, but he actually recommended the opposite. He said solder in the pin header first and then solder the board to it. So that's what we're going to be doing here. What I'm going to do for this is, again, everything seems to be clean at this point, but I'm just going to flux these points with a little bit of flux, and then we can continue on and get them all soldered. Alright, so that should be it about here for actually getting the board in place. And let me just clean up a little bit as well too, just to get some of that flux off. Even if we have the flux on there for now, at least it'll be okay, but I'd like to, clean off just to see exactly what's going on here. Alright, so you might be a little bit lost as to where to put this, and that's fine. First of all, you want to take the board. You want to make sure that the flat side is going to be going towards this RAM block right here. Then all you need to do is take it and orient it as such about right there. There we go. So there's a few ways you can tell that this is the way it's supposed to go. First of all, let's point out the points that we need to solder to. There's going to be this point right here. It's going to be this point, This point, that's part of the LPC, but that's fine. This point, I moved it a bit. Right there, you can just barely see it. And this one right here. So those are going to be all 5 of the points that we're going to be soldering to. So even if you want to, this is what I'm going to do at least. I would actually even recommend taking this off and just tinning all of the points that we're supposed to be hitting before we get this completely soldered in. So that way we're sure and we'll have, a easier time getting this connected. Alright, so now that we've gotten all of that set up and ready to go, what I'm going to do is just pop this on hand as such. Let me see if I can get it. There we go. Alright, fantastic. So again, it looks like it's going to be this point here, this point, this point, that point, this point, and this point. Those are going to be the ones. So again, what I would recommend, if this video is not clear enough, just kind of position this where it's supposed to go, and then tin the points that you're supposed to hit. And that would, I guess, be the best way to do it. So this doesn't perfectly line up from what I see, but we can make it work from still what I can tell. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tape this down just across right here to make sure it doesn't move anywhere, kind of get it into place, and then start soldering. Well, I can say that certainly makes it easier having it taped up. So now at this point, what we can do is just flux each point and then solder to it and see what happens. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put flux on top of each of these, and each of these points, which has a bit of silver on them, you're going to have to solder those onto it because that's how the connectivity is going to be done. And these 2 points look to be fluxed up enough. So let's go ahead and continue on with the install. So that is literally all we needed to do. Fantastic. That soldered in, well, a lot easier than I expected. So there we go. Now all I'm going to do is slowly take this off. There we go. And it looks like this is all in place. Now because mine, it seemed like, was a little bit bent, what I did have to do is I had to push down on that just a tiny bit, get it soldered in. But once you had it at all the main points, that's about all you need. So we got this mostly cleaned up here. The last thing I could recommend, just in case you need it, is we have this spare D0 point here, and it certainly wouldn't hurt to tin this, again, just in case you need it. So I'm just going to tin that real quick. So now all the points we need are tinned, and again, just in case you need to access D0, you have it right there. Alright, so now at this point I've let it dry off for a little bit and everything. I think we're good to go, so I'm going to flip the board over and let's get the Modchip installed. Now here's the nice thing, check this out. This should be the most we have to do. So I'm just going to take that off. There we go. And awesome. Now let me grab the Modchip here. And at least for a Aladdin, this is the, I guess, hardest part of the install here. You just have to make sure this is lined up. So with the top of the Xbox here, Aladdin XT plus 2 is going to be, facing that way. Really just make sure, the text is oriented the same with this chip here. And just pop it on like so. And that's it. Hardest part, that's it. No, really, that is the easiest part there. So even if you all want to see, I can see if I could show you all from the side. Right here, if you're looking at it from the side, you really just have to take this, make sure it's matched up as such, then plop it on, and again, that is all you do to install the Modchip. So there, it has now been socketed onto the Xbox, and if everything works accordingly, this original Xbox should now be hard modded. So let's go ahead and hook up the console as it is supposed to be and boot it up and see if it boots up a custom BIOS. Alright, so I got the console right here. Unfortunately there's no red light glowing on this chip I have, but if you can see the red board inside, that is the mod chip. So let's go ahead, fire this thing up, and make sure it works. And check it out. It says EvoX right there, or Evox, however you're going to say it, so that means that the custom BIOS is loaded. However, you're going to notice that it looks like there's no modifications done because I have not modded this Xbox yet, not even a soft mod. So in order to test and make sure this fully works, I'm just going to take a copy of ToXZiN 2019 that I have. I'm going to pop it in. And yeah, even though there's no custom dashboard here, this is all the stock dash, so all the contents on the hard drive are untouched and they're all stock. Oh, there we go. See, it has loaded up a lot faster than I expected. But I can hear it spinning. If you look over here, the light is now red, meaning that it has detected everything as need be. And if we wait here for another 30 seconds or so, it should load us in. Because having this custom BIOS allows us to, even with a stock hard drive, boot up a burned game. So this should work. Probably should have picked a game itself, honestly, but this will be fine as well too. This just takes a while. It takes like a minute to boot up. There we go. Check it out. So I did not cut that at all right here, but it looks like this is working, and that is indeed a 1.6. So there we go. At that point, if you have followed along with this at all to install that LPC rebuild board, you can now follow along with any of my other tutorials. I do have a recommended tutorial I'll put down below in the description on how to upgrade your hard drive on a hard modded Xbox, because now technically your Xbox is hard modded. But let me even pop this out. Oh, that's disabled. That's a little unfortunate, but yeah. It is indeed working, so the mod chip works. That means the LPC rebuild board works. That was great. Alright, so summing it all up here, I guess in review and kind of a overview, these LPC rebuild boards, I do have to say, if you're at the end of this video and you're considering getting one of these, this alone is not going to hard mod your system. Again, you need to have the mod chip. The goal of the LPC rebuild board is to make the LPC rebuild easier on a 1.6 console. If you have a 1.5 or lower, there's absolutely no need for you to get this because you won't be able to use it in the first place because it's just not needed for that. Now, in my opinion, ease of use on these, I found it to be pretty easy. It seemed to be a little bit confusing at first as to the placement, but once I got that down, again, I just kind of showed what I did on there, and I just tapped everything, soldered it all in, and it seemed to work well enough. While I was soldering this, if you've ever messed with a quick solder board before, this is the exact same thing. It was extremely easy to do. And then as for the final product, in my opinion, you can make a LPC rebuild look nice, or you can make it look ugly. I believe mine, the ones that I wire in, they look better than they used to on camera. I just haven't done an updated video, but this does absolutely clean up the install itself. So as for time, I'm not sure if it would save you any time necessarily. It might save a little bit, but this is really just to make the install easier and cleaner at that. So is it worth getting one of these? In my opinion, I definitely like these here, so I'm probably going to order more whenever I run out of them. But ToXZiN 1, shoutouts to you for getting these over to me. These were not given to me for free, by the way. I ended up paying for them. I bought 10 of them here, so this is fun to definitely try out, and again, I do plan to use these on my 1.6 consoles. Now finally, if you are looking to get one of these, if the website is up, I will have a link down below in the description where you can get these ones here in particular. If you are using a 1.6 rebuild board designed by someone else, hopefully this video can work for you, although I can't guarantee it's going to, simply because I don't know what exact rebuild board you are using. But this one worked just fine for the ToXZiN 1 rebuild board, so I think we're good to go at that point. Anyways, this is Mr. Mario signing off. Thank you all for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, a like would absolutely be appreciated. If you didn't like it, a dislike is fine as well too. let's go ahead and finish up this Xbox here.